Hey guys, in this video I'm going to be discussing mixing and recording electric guitars. Specifically, I'm going to be talking about rhythm guitars. In a different video, I'll focus on lead guitars. And along the way, I'll discuss reasons why you might mix and record them a little bit different, that being rhythm and lead guitars. So let's get started. I'm going to be discussing rhythm guitars in the context of a song that I've been working on. I've used this song in other videos, but for this one, I'm going to focus primarily on the rhythm guitars. So let me play back the first few, the intro and the first few bars of the verse, and you can hear how it sounds. And then I'll kind of work backwards and show you how I got to the sounds as they are in the mix right now. So here's the song. Alright, so that should give you an idea. Just kind of a simple pop rock kind of sound and mix going on. I've got some drums, acoustic guitar, rhythm guitar, lead guitar, and bass. So nothing too fancy on the instrumentation or anything like that. I'm going to go ahead and turn off. These are the kind of processing I've had on the master fader, kind of like mastering kind of stuff going on. Let me play you back now just the rhythm guitars. I have a Strat kind of sound on one channel and a Les Paul on the other one. I have them going into this bus right here. So let me solo these. Alright, and you can just hear the rhythm guitars now. Oops, let's try that again. Alright, so that's the sound that I've got going. You know, these guitar sounds are pretty clean, but there's just a little bit of guitar amp distortion or overdrive or saturation, whatever you want to call it, that I like to, you know, for this style of music, specifically try and get the guitars to sound clean with just the slightest amount of overdrive on them. To kind of fill out the song. So just to discuss what I've done, I have the two tracks. They are playing essentially the same part, and I have them one panned out to the right, one panned out to the left. Again, they're going to this bus track, and I have a compressor on it. That's the Waves Renaissance Axe. And then I have these signal chains going on. They're pretty similar on each track, but we'll get to those in a second. What I'm going to do is bypass all the effects so you can hear what the tracks sound like, just the raw recorded electric guitar sounds. And for many of you, you know, hopefully you guys have an idea about how to record an electric guitar. Maybe you have a specific guitar that you like, or a particular amp that you like. And then maybe initially here what I'll do in the video is show you some things about how you can mix them, kind of effects, processors, and things like that inside of Pro Tools. And then later on, what I'll do is discuss how I like to record them. So the first part will be mixing, then later on I'll come back and talk about how I like to record them. But for the first part, I'll just assume that you can record an electric guitar sound however you like into Pro Tools. So let me play it back now, and you can hear what it sounds like. So hopefully you think that those sound pretty good. Maybe they're not your kind of sound that you like on electric guitars, but that's all right. Anyway, let me talk about the signal chain that I like to use for the electric guitars. So the first thing I usually like to do, if I've recorded the guitars with an amp and a microphone, or in other ways, maybe I've recorded it direct, the first thing I like to do is use some subtractive equalization. And what that's going to do is just take out ever so slightly some frequencies that I think kind of resonate too much or something like that in the signal. And what that does is it sort of cleans up the sound and make sure that there's those things that parts of the signal that kind of clash or might dominate how the guitar part is perceived. Those frequencies, just pull them back a little bit, and that's what I've done here. Just a 3-band EQ, digital EQ, the Q10 from Waves. Just a few dB of gain reduction at these particular frequencies. Now what I typically do, just to give you an example, let me solo just one of these and put it in the center. Show you how I like to do subtractive equalization. Is typically what I'll do is start from a lower frequency, boost it with a pretty sharp Q, and then sweep in and find the frequency I don't like and pull it out. So it's right around 330 that I had pulled out before, and hopefully you can hear that part got pretty loud. So that's all there is, and I repeated that on the other with the other bands of EQ and found those other frequencies. Just one thing to think about with electric guitars is you don't want to necessarily remove kind of like the fundamental frequency of the guitar unless you're going for a specific effect. So you want to, you heard right around 100, 200 hertz in that range. The signal is being, it was louder when I was boosting that. That's just because there's a lot of energy in the signal at those frequencies, because that's where the fundamental frequency of the instrument is. So it was really the higher frequencies that I wanted to pull out, and not those low ones initially. So that's all I've got on subtractive equalization. Let me play you these back again and pull this in and out so you can hear what I've done with the signal. Sorry about that. Alright, this is with them both bypassed. Both active. So it really cleans up that mid-range by doing just a few dB of equalization. That's all I've done. Just at a couple frequencies, and I've got that. The next thing I'm going to do is talk about the Slate Digital VCC. So I like to use this one to model an analog console. So a lot of people think that that digital doesn't sound good, recording in Pro Tools, because it sounds too clean. It doesn't have that same analog warmth as things like when back in the day when people were recording using these big, nice mixing desks, the SSLs, the knees, and things like that. Now, when you just have like I've got a Digi 002 interface, recording straight into Pro Tools, it just doesn't have that same vibe to it. And so what I like is these plugins that have become popular in the past couple years is the analog console plugins, that all they really do is add in some kind of analog color, obviously modeled analog color, kind of saturation, and stuff like that to kind of make mixing in the box sound a lot more like when you're recording with great outboard hardware. So what I've done at this stage, the next thing is use the VCC, and I'm using the SSL model. I've got the drive boosted up a little bit, and I'll pull these in and out, and you can hear what this one's adding in. Yeah, I'm hearing some maybe just a little bit extra saturation going on. It's doing some nice things to the mid-range of the guitars that I really like. And it just, when you take them out, it just sounds like you're sucking the life out of the signal as much as anything else. And so when you put them back in, all of a sudden you've got the life back in performance. It sounds good. The next thing I've got going on is the Slate Digital virtual tape machine. This is the same idea as the VCC. It's just going to add in the tape warmth rather than before I was adding in kind of like that analog console warmth. Same sort of thing. People love the sound of tape because it adds some nice, just like a nice glue and soft compression to the signal. So that's what I'm trying to do at this point in the signal chain is I use the VCC and VTM to just prepare the signal for the other processors that I'm going to do the compression and equalization by setting them up with kind of like coloring the signal initially in a pleasing way by using the virtual tape machines in VCC. So just to go over the settings, I've pulled out the noise reduction. That's all the really settings that I've changed. As far as that goes, I'm still using the 16-track normal bias, but what I like to do is with the speed is use a slower speed compared to 30 inches per second. I like to use 15 inches per second or whatever the slower speed is on my tape machine plugin, specifically for electric guitars, because what that's going to do is kind of very in a smooth way, very subtle way, take out some of the high end in the guitars that make it sound harsh. So that's why I'm using the tape machine plugin at this point, because that's something that tape is known for having nice, smooth top end and not very harsh, which is the contrast to digital. So let me play you these back, take them in and out, and you can hear what I've done. So again, I'm hearing some nice things in the mid-range, that the plugins are adding that nice warmth that tape is known for. So that's great. I think that it's a perfect plugin. It's kind of a special effect plugin. It's kind of does a whole host of things. It's kind of like an EQ in the sense that it boosts a little bit of the low end in a smooth way, takes a little bit off the top in a smooth way, and it also adds a little bit of saturation, and it also adds a little bit of compression. So that's why I like to use those. They set up later on when I move on to compressors and EQs, they set it up well, so I don't have to do a whole lot of compression. I don't have to do a whole lot of EQ because a lot of that stuff is already taken care of. So that's what I've got initially going. Next is the compressors that I like to use. Let me bring these up. I'm using the Waves CLA 76. This is a model after the Universal Audio 1176. I guess it's made by it's been made by a couple people since it was first created. I'm actually just using the Waves preset for electric guitars. I think it sounds really good. And I think some of the other plugins, like in the CLA pack, the LA2A and LA3A, other people have raved about those being really great with electric guitars, and the 1176 is more of a drum plugin. But I actually think that its specific analog sound and color that it adds in, the kind of compression. It works really well with like these guitars that are distorted ever so slightly and just have a little bit of overdrive. I think the 1176 complements that really well. I'll show you the bluey and the blackie, but I think that they both add different kinds of sounds, but I like the 1176 best actually for electric guitars. So here we go. So you can see I'm just a few dB of gain reductions is all you need. 4:1 ratio, slow attack but fast release. And you just use the input to for the gain reduction. I'll bypass these and you can hear them. So that's perfect. That's exactly what I want. Not a whole lot of compression. That there's still some dynamics to the performance, but it's just enough to keep it under control. I like that, and I like the extra color that the 1176 adds into here. Next, I'm using the SSL EQ. Bring that in. So this isn't the full channel strip. This is just the EQ. And again, I've pulled up the rhythm guitar preset. There's nothing fancy going on here. Rolled out some low end below, I guess it's about 95 hertz. Then again, I pulled some extra out here with the low frequency band. Boosted a little bit up here between 1.5 and 2 with a wide Q. Just a little bit there. And then a little bit higher, again with a wide Q. You know, I don't think you need to do a whole lot of EQ at this point. It's just a few dB is all. And then also here with the high shelf, I am boosting there around 8K. So I will take it in and out, and you can hear what it sounds like, the difference between how I've EQ'd them. The main thing is with the electric guitars, what I'm trying to do is make space for the bass and make space for the drums and things like that have lower frequencies. So I'm pulling those out so that those other instruments can kind of fill that space in the mix. And I'm boosting up here at higher frequencies to help the electric guitar cut through the mix also. And that's really it. I'll play it back and you can hear it. So hopefully you can hear, you know, just, I'm not even at the most, that's 3 dB that I'm boosting. These are less than 3. It's about 3 dB that I'm cutting. You don't need to do a whole lot of EQ for it to make a dramatic difference in your song. And I think that's, you know, an important thing to do, but that's also dependent on the fact that I've used these VCC and VTM initially to kind of get the sound how I wanted. You know, I don't have to worry too much about the high end at this point because the VTM is really smooth that high end out, and so I can boost some frequencies that I like and not really have to worry too much about it getting that harsh as long as I'm just boosting a few frequencies. So I think that I've got it sounding good on the individual tracks. The next thing I've got is it going to these individual tracks are both going to this bus track, and at this point all I'm doing here is using the Renaissance Axe plugin. It's really easy to use. It sounds great for electric guitars. That's what it's made for. You don't have to worry about too many controls or anything like that. All there really is a threshold, gain, and attack. I haven't even moved the attack from the default setting. And what you do is you just bring down the threshold, and you can watch the gain reduction on this meter. And at this point, what I'm just trying to do is glue the performance together. So you just bring the threshold down, and that's really it. I'll play it back. You can see on the meter here what I'm doing. So there's a little bit more dynamics going on there. Now it's more stable throughout the track. It's also adding some warmth. And by doing that compression, what it's doing is it's bringing up the overall level. And so I think what that does is, especially the sustain of the tracks, the sustain of the guitar parts lasts for longer, and it brings out more of those frequencies that are part of the sustain of the notes. So that's really all the processing that I'm using. So I'll play it back here individually and then play it back in the mix, and you can hear how it's working. All right, now in the context of the mix. So hopefully you guys got an opportunity to then hear how the electric guitar sits in the mix. And the last thing I want to talk about is specifically the painting that I'm using. You can hear that the other instruments I've got a lead guitar that's in the center. I've got then the bass that's in the center. The drums are kind of panned out across the whole from left to right. And then these electric guitars, what I want to do, even though they're playing the same part, is separate them out and make space in the middle for the other instruments, like the bass, the lead, and the acoustic guitars are also here, panned a little bit left and right, but for the most part they're together in the center. So these electric guitar parts, by putting those way out on the sides, it's opening it up, your stereo image, and making space for other instruments, but also because they're kind of playing the same thing, it is symmetric across the mix and sounds pretty good. So that's why I wanted to discuss related to mixing the acoustic or the electric guitars. But I also want to talk about a little bit about how I record them. So when I was recording the electric guitars, I was using this guitar right here. It's a Variax 700 from line 6. It's a modeling guitar. So when you saw in my Pro Tools session where it said I was using a Les Paul and a Strat, what I was really using was the modeled versions of the Les Paul and the Strat that come with the Variax. So this is a guitar. It's an older generation of the Variax. There's even the new James Taylor Variaxes that are out right now. If you've never heard them before, they're pretty cool. I was skeptical myself before I purchased one and tried it out, but I I've been happily pleased with the one that I've got, and I use it all the time. I think it's perfect for a recording studio, so I definitely recommend it. Let me show you how I've got it quickly set up in Pro Tools so I can play you back some of the sounds and you can hear how I was recording the sounds that I've got. So let me show you the Pro Tools session. I'm going to bring up just a new auxiliary input, and what I've done with this guitar is I've used the Variax cable output as a digital output, and that's going to go into my Pod HD500. And the Pod HD500 is going to do the amp simulation that I've been using, and then output another digital signal down the SPDIF cable into my Digi002. So that's an all digital signal path. It sounds very clean when you record it. If you're not certain how to set that up, I've got another video that shows more in depth how you set that up with Pro Tools. So check that out if you're interested. But I'm going to quickly get it set up here. Show you the things that you need to look for, setting the clock source to the SPDIF. And then you've got the input here. Now when I play it back. So right now what I'm playing is the Les Paul, and I'm using that preset. Let me bring over, I'm using the Pod HD500, and that's a floorboard that I'm using, but it comes with this software, and you can use it to edit rather than having to use the floorboard and edit all the different parameters and things like that. It gives you a nice user interface that you can use to control your presets. So here are the two presets I'm using. The one is the Les Paul and the other one's the Strat. In the amps sims that I'm using, I think what I like for this kind of style of music is a Les Paul going into an AC30, and that's what I've got here. I'll show you the preset that I'm using. Just a little bit on the drive, not much on the EQ going on. I don't use any of their modeled room sounds or anything like that. Just the normal cabinet with the Neumann U67 model. I'll show you some of the microphone models so you can hear the difference. That's the main part of the preset that I've got. I just use a little bit of compression. This is must be the LA2A style compressor. Not a whole lot, and it's even going in parallel. So if you look at the mixer, actually, I guess the sound that I'm recording, the left one over here, is just the compressed one. So that's how that works. And then I've got a little bit of EQ here, not doing a whole lot. 1 dB I'm pulling out, again at that low frequencies like I was talking about earlier, taking out a little bit on the low end, boosting a little bit around 220. That's where that, the fundamental frequencies of the guitar is. Pulling around 440, that's the mid-range I don't want. Boosting around 1.1 and boosting around 2.2. That is the exact kind of EQ I want. You can hear, hopefully, for the most part, that's a clean sound, but it's just a little bit on the edge of saturation. That's exactly what I wanted. Let me show you the different microphones. That's a SM57 on axis, off axis. It's a little bit darker of a sound. 409. Sennheiser 421. And there's two ribbon mics. Much darker. Still sound good. Then the one that I was using, the U67. That's pretty clean. Sounds good on the amp. U87. So that's the preset. I'm recording it dry. I've got really no effects other than EQ, no reverbs, no delays, anything. If I want to add those things in later on, I always add those in Pro Tools rather than recording them wet during the initial signal path. So that's something just to think about when you're recording. Let me show you the other preset. It's a Strat sound. and I'm using specifically the bridge pickup model for these guitars, the Les Paul and the Strat. I'll show you some of the other ones in a few minutes here, but I think to me, these two are just the classic pop rock sounds. You got the Strat going into the Marshall Plexi, and you got the Les Paul going into the AC30. Those to me are the quintessential pop rock guitar sounds, and I think that they both kind of complement each other. They're a little bit different. The Strat with the single coil pickups on one side, with the Plexi that's a little bit got a little bit more overdrive, but because the Strat doesn't have as high of a gain output, it just, the Plexi doesn't add too much distortion, just a little bit, make it a little bit crispy, and I like that. On the Les Paul, then with the AC30, that's a little bit more mid-rangey. I think they kind of complement each other really well. So again, this is the Strat bridge pickup. You can see the preset that I've got. I'm using this cabinet and this microphone. Again, same sort of thing. I've got just a little bit of compression, just a little bit of EQ, same sort of things, just about 1 dB, 2 dB that I'm doing here on that. Let me go back to the amp, maybe show you a couple of the different, this is a 412 cabinet. Let me show you some of the other ones that come. So you can hear the different sounds. Back to the one I started with. So that's really all there is to the guitar sound of how I was recording it. These are pretty clean kind of sounds. Just a little bit of overdrive I think is perfect for this style of music. I guess the last thing I should mention is, I think everything in the signal chain makes a difference, from the amp sim you're using to the guitar that you're using and everything like that. I've got Ernie Ball Cobalt strings on the guitar. These are medium gauge strings, so I even think having medium gauge versus light versus extra light, all those things make a difference. And it's not to say just because I've got mediums on here, they're the 11s of the Ernie Cobalts. For a different song or a different style of music, I might consider light gauge strings or extra light. Also, I'm tuned down to standard D for this song, and when I tune down, I like to use the heavier gauge strings. So that's really it as far as getting a good amp sim going into your session. And so I'm using the Pod HG500 to do that. In another video, I'll show you how to use plug-in amp sims, because this software is running outside of Pro Tools, and the floorboard is doing the amp simulation to go into Pro Tools. One thing that I like about this kind of setup and why I use it a lot is because I don't have to worry about latency. The floorboard, using a DSP chip, is doing the amp simulation, the processing in near real time. However, when you use Pro Tools and you use a plugin and you want to record with the amp sim sound going, you can have the problem that there's latency introduced by the computer, for the computer to take in the signal, process it, and spit it back out for you on your headphones to listen to. It can take a delay. And so by doing this, I like to use this setup with a DSP on a floorboard or some kind of external processor to record it as low latency as possible. So that's all I wanted to show you with this video. Hopefully you got to see how I like to record my electric guitar and also how I like to mix it. Tune in for other videos where I talk about different ways of mixing as well. I'll go ahead and play out the song again here at the end, just so you can hear how the electric guitars fully mixed sit with the rest of the instruments. Till next time, take care.